Mold, fat loss, and fitness. This is Dr. Hart here with Microbalance Health Products. Tonight, going live, answering your questions. We're going to be covering all the good information about how mold impacts things like your fitness, your fat loss goals, getting healthier, right? Getting more fit, dealing with those sort of things. But first of all, I want to say this is not medical advice. It's not intended to treat, cure, or deal with medical illnesses. It is for your informational purposes only. Guys, thank you so much, Microbalance, for having me out tonight. I'm super excited to do this. Dr. Hart here with Keystone Total Health. So let's jump in, start talking about this. Big one, though, is add your comments, add your questions as we go. We've got a ton that people submitted, but if you're on Facebook or if you're on Instagram, go ahead and submit those questions, and I would love to answer them as we go. So let's jump right in. How can mold impact things like your fat loss or getting stronger or your recovery, right? So there's a couple of reasons why if you're dealing with mold illness, you might be struggling with your diet and exercise. You might be dieting, you might be eating low calories, high protein, low carb, whatever it is, plant-based, right? You might be exercising, burning more calories than you're eating, but you're actually gaining weight, right? Or you're not losing any weight despite doing all the right things. Maybe despite moving in the right track with your mold protocol, taking all the right supplements, you're not getting the energy you want, right? You don't have the stamina, the endurance you want. You're getting weaker. You're not getting stronger despite your time in the gym or doing your push-ups or doing your yoga, right? You're not progressing. So what's going on with that? Well, tonight we're going to answer some of those questions. So let's jump in a bit and see what's mold illness look like, right? So if you've been around Microbalance or sinusitis wellness, you've probably read a lot about mold, okay? Mycotoxin exposure, whether that's fungal infestation, the sinuses or lungs, or your home has mold issues, right? Like maybe you've got some mold overgrowth happening on your test plates and showing up in your home, right? And so you're dealing with those moldy issues, brain fog, fatigue, hormone problems, trouble sleeping, sinus problems, chronically getting sick. But what about other goals like fat loss, getting fit, getting stronger, right? Getting ready for a 5K, and you're struggling with that. Well, tonight we're going to talk about 4 main reasons that happens with mold illness. Okay, number 1 is leptin resistance. That's a big one we'll talk about with fat loss. Number 2 is mitochondrial dysfunction. Number 3 is hypoperfusion. Whoa, that's a mouthful. That means lack of blood flow. Okay, so lack of blood flow. And then number 4 is hormone imbalances. Okay, so let's jump in. Let's talk about these. First of all, if you're dealing with issues with fat loss and you're doing all the right things, please check for mold. Okay, you can do like a urine mycotoxin test to see if you're carrying mold, or we do muscle response testing or direct resonance biofeedback testing. But you can do a simple test with the EC3 mold plates. Check and see if your belongings, your clothes, your home has mold in it. Okay. Well, here's an off-label use that I love to do with patients, right? This is not necessarily how the plates are intended to be used, but it's a fun experiment. Take a Q-tip, stick it up your nose, okay, and smear it on that EC3 mold plate. Give it 5 to 7 days to grow, and let's see what's growing in those sinuses and those nasal cavities. And that's sometimes a good indication. Are you dealing with mold toxicity or mold illness? And so mold illness can create what's called leptin resistance. Leptin resistance is a big buzzword in the fitness community, where basically leptin is a little hormone, okay? That hormone, hey Reem, you can order the test plates directly from Microbalance Health Products. You can go to their website, microbalancehealthproducts.com or sinusitiswellness.com, or you can reach out to our team at the clinic. We carry the plates as well on there. So getting some great questions on Facebook too, guys. So leptin is the hormone. It does actually a lot in our pituitary gland, okay? It's what balances out some of our other hormones in there. But a big one is it helps regulate, are we full, right? Have we eaten enough? Do we have enough energy? Do we need to store more energy? Do we need to burn more energy? Do we need to eat more food, right? It regulates hunger, regulates metabolism. And so when leptin's in balance, we know when to quit eating. We know when we're hungry. Our body has plenty of energy to use. Catherine says there's a link to the store in our profile here. So if you're on Instagram, go to the link. There's a link to the store on there. Easy enough. You can find on the Facebook page too. Right? And so leptin balances that out. Leptin helps us to gauge, okay, look, we're hungry. We're low on energy. Take some fat, some energy from our fat cells and help us have the energy to get going, right? Leptin does that. But mold toxins, mycotoxins specifically, they block those receptors in the pituitary gland. And so the body never gets a signal that there's enough leptin there, right? It gets leptin resistant. So the body says, oh, I need to make more leptin. But then those receptors are still blocked. And so we never get that signal. So we never get that totally full feeling, right? Our body actually ends up thinking we're full and that we don't need more energy to come in and that we actually have plenty. And so you can be exhausted. Your cells can be starving, but you're never getting that signal to actually take the energy from the food and use it. What do you do with it? You store it, right? If you don't need more money, you're spending all the money you need. You don't need any more. You just save it if you earn it, right? That's what your fat cells are doing when leptin is like this. They're saying, hey, we don't need any more energy. We're good. We're going to put it away in our storage bank, your fat cells. So what happens is you're eating the same amount of calories. You're eating a great diet. You're exercising, and you're not losing any weight because your body thinks, I'm good. I don't need to get any energy from my fat cells. I don't need to get any more energy really from our food. We're just going to keep putting it in our fat cells and we're fine. And so you create this effect of like your cells are starving for food. You have a feast in front of you, but you can't get the signal to actually sit down and eat, right? You keep thinking, maybe I'm okay. I don't need to eat, but you're starving inside. And so you keep gaining weight without actually using any more energy. And so does it impact nutrient absorption? It does. So leptin does impact nutrient absorption, and here's how it does that. So on one hand, it has a major downstream effect. And so when we start blocking these leptin receptors in our pituitary gland, we actually block another major hormone called MSH, melanocyte stimulating hormone. Guys, there's no quizzes, okay? So if you're taking notes, just remember MSH. You don't have to remember what it stands for. Now, what we really think of that does is it helps make us tan in the sun. And this is partially why mold toxic patients have a hard time getting tan. But that hormone also regulates things like leaky gut, okay? And so then we do have an issue with nutrient absorption and inflammation in the gut because when that hormone's low, we get leaky gut. And that also plays in, which I'll talk about in a second, other hormones. But then that also makes our immune system weak. It lowers our endorphins, so we have more pain and less joy, right? So here's a biggie that happens a lot of folks who are mold toxic. They feel worse after exercise. What's one of the reasons? They're not getting the endorphin rush from exercise, right? Because of this leptin resistance, our endorphins are blocked. So when you go for a run, instead of getting that endorphin rush, that runner's high, you just feel terrible, right? There's nothing blocking the pain from it. There's nothing blocking your normal pain, and you're not getting the good feels, right? And so it's just the suckiness of exercise without the benefit because you're not losing any weight because of leptin resistance, and you're not getting the endorphins because of that leptin blocking that MSH pathway, right? And so that downstream effect gets massively affected, and the longer it goes on, the more those effects happen, okay? And so now that sounds a little bleak, and it makes it tough, and if you're experiencing that, you know it's tough. It's frustrating, so frustrating, but there's hope. Why? We have to recognize what's causing the leptin resistance. 9 times out of 10, it's mold toxicity, right? Whether that's mold in the sinuses or the secondary infections in the sinuses that mold causes, whether that's the mold toxins in the system and the cells. But we need to deal with that mold toxicity. So he says here, I gained 50 pounds and never ate differently, moved from a mold-ridden unit and had no idea about it, mold in my furniture, even my bed frame. Yes, you guys, we talked about the EC3 mold plates. You can test everything. You can test the air. You can test furniture. You can test clothes, carpets, right? We even have people, like we said, test sinuses. You can test pets. Figure it out where it's at. You don't want to take it from house to house. We had a patient this week. She's moving out of a moldy apartment into a new apartment. And so as they're getting that moved done, they've got a storage unit and they're using the plates to test each of the major items so they know what's clean, what needs to be cleaned with the fogger, the EC3 fogging solution, and then what maybe needs to be thrown out. Okay, so remember that because mold is going to block the leptin, which is going to make it hard to lose weight, use your fat cells, what's going to make it hard to exercise and enjoy exercise because of the endorphin blockade. So with that front, we'll talk more about what you can do, but the key here is figure out if mold is the root cause of that leptin resistance, and you can also test leptin. You can get a blood test for leptin to see if your leptin's too high, you're probably leptin resistant, right? And you can get a blood test for MSH. If your MSH is too low, we know that's resistant. Really, what we do in our clinic, we just test MSH. And then I know if MSH is low, leptin's likely to be high. Okay, that's a factor. And then if your MSH is low and you're having difficulty losing weight, we already know you're leptin resistant. Okay, that's just based on labs. You can save yourself the money in the blood test and just do that one. And so what we need to do then is clear the fungus out of our body, right? We can use then the like the different nasal sprays and nasal rinses to clean that out. The Citri drops, nasal sprays at that point, start cleaning out. Use the nasal pure rinses. We love those. Get that junk cleared out and start detoxing your body. Okay, start getting those mycotoxins out of your body, detoxing your fat stores because you store toxins in your fat, right? So things like sauna, ionic foot baths, detox supplements, coffee enemas are great for that liver, fat stores, to clear that stuff out. Okay, start detoxing it and then make sure your home environment's clear. That's number one with leptin resistance. Let's look at mitochondrial dysfunction. And guys, again, if you have questions, let me take a peek here if I am missing any questions that are related to that. So let me say, low MSH, I'm going to cover that one in a second. Had thyroid removed, exposed to mold for years, had thyroid removed, the mycotoxins do accumulate in the thyroid gland and can get that affected. And so had thyroid gland removed, gained weight. I watch what I eat, usually one meal a day, and I drink lots of water, can't lose weight. My doctor told me I won't lose weight, and I'm insulin resistant. What can I do? If you're insulin resistant, then you are likely leptin resistant, okay? So let's talk about this. This is a good segue. I'm so glad this question was submitted. What do you do? So the way to treat leptin resistance is a great way to treat insulin resistance, okay? So we already looked at get out of the mold, treat the mold infections, detox the mold, okay? Those are the biggies. You got to deal with the root causes. Here's how you start to reset your leptin, okay? Number one, eat 3 meals a day. Breakfast, lunch, dinner. I know intermittent fasting is great. I love it. But when you're leptin resistant, we've got to deal with 3 meals a day. We've got to re-regulate the cycles. Somebody said, what about dramatic weight loss? That's important. I'll get to that. It's a good question. Okay, so leptin resistant, 3 meals a day. Really, breakfast earlier is better. High protein meals, especially breakfast. I know men and women try to get 40, 50 grams. If you're a smaller woman, less than 5'2", maybe 35 grams of protein. But get that protein early in the morning. Have a beef patty. Have some chicken sausage, some eggs or duck eggs. Have a little bit of steak and eggs in the morning, right? Get that in there. And you want breakfast to be very low carb. Okay, so maybe have it with some veggies or a little bit of fruit. Okay, that's early on. Lunch and dinner focused around protein, easy to digest veggies, little bits of fruit. You want to keep carbohydrates minimum early on for like 6 to 8 weeks. You want to keep carbohydrates minimum. I'm not saying ketogenic diet. Okay, yeah, leftovers for breakfast, do it. It's easy, right? Sometimes what we'll make this taco dish with some meat, a little bit of beans and veggies. I'll boil that up in fry it up with some eggs and a little salsa. Boom, perfect breakfast. Okay, so you're eating your 3 meals, lunch and dinner, focus on protein, easy to digest veggies. You can have a little carbs, some rice, some sweet potatoes, but you want the carbohydrates to be anti-inflammatory. You really want to avoid grains during this time, and then you really want to avoid major sugary starches that are going to spike blood sugar, okay? You want to keep carbohydrates on the lower side. I tell patients a lot of times like 125 grams or less, really probably 100 grams or less. Oops, sorry guys, bumped the camera. 100 grams or less there. Somebody says, even if you're not hungry in the morning, here's what I'd say to that one. If you're not hungry in the morning, start with just a little bit of protein or a protein shake and work your way up, okay? And this next point, which I'm going to make, is going to help that factor. Stop eating 4 to 5 hours before bedtime, okay? So if you go to bed at 10 o'clock, you need to really finish dinner around 5 o'clock, maybe 6 o'clock, okay? You've got to give that gap because that time frame, that little bit of fast before bed helps to repair the pituitary, which stimulates and balances the leptin and cleans up and helps that growth hormone secretion as well. That helps that. Guess what else helps that growth hormone and pituitary heal? Cell-tropin from Microbalance Health Products. We use that a lot, but that cell-tropin helps with the pituitary, helps with growth hormone release at night on that front. It looks like somebody's talking there. No, I don't know if you're talking about the no late night eating, but that helps And then you can do a little bit of GABA. Liposomal GABA helps repair that growth hormone, leptin pathway at night as well. Okay, so you're doing that before bedtime. You don't want to do a lot of intense exercise first thing in the morning. Okay, you want to do a little bit of light exercise, or what's really great is like 15 minutes of walking after meals. Okay, it balances that cycle out, but really if you're insulin resistant, it helps the sugars that are getting into your bloodstream go into the cells without insulin. Okay, and then there's lots of great supplements for leptin and insulin resistance that we can look at. But again, we want to focus on the basics: diet, exercise, right? So 3 meals a day, eat protein early, focus on protein, limit the carbs, not keto, right? Just limit the carbohydrates, fast 4 to 5 hours before bedtime, okay, to get that ready. You can use some Celtropin throughout the day, and at bedtime you can use a little bit of GABA at that time. A couple of good supplements. Berberine is a great one for blood sugar. Skullcap is another great one, especially around bedtime to help balance blood sugar. There's other good ones. Fish oil, right? Those are all good things, but focus on that. Hit the root causes, deal with the mold. That's a great way for insulin resistance. That's a great way for leptin resistance to deal with that. So melatonin is a great hormone for the pituitary and the pineal gland. Okay, in higher doses, even like really high doses, like 30, 40, 50 milligrams doses, that actually has a very good detox and anti-inflammatory effect. I'll have patients do that for short stints, like 2 to 4 weeks of doing really high dose melatonin to help support that, right? Great for deep sleep, great for helping to repair the damage that was done. If you've done a decent amount of detox at that point, you can do the high dose melatonin protocols, similar to some of the COVID protocols with melatonin at bedtime on that front, and work with that. And if you have trouble sleeping, you can do low dose melatonin, but it does help balance that. Okay, personally with patients, unless you're really struggling with sleep, I don't like to use melatonin all the time. I like you to cycle on and off of it, but it's a great one. A lot of late night bad eating habits are out there. And so do your best, but if you start to re-regulate this cycle, it does help. Okay, and then you can have water, you can have seltzer waters in that front. You can even do, if you really needed to, a little bit of collagen or bone broth in the evening that's got a lot of glycine. Glycine, which I'll talk about in a second, is really important for the pituitary as well as another pathway we'll talk about. Okay, can excess carbs worsen depersonalization? In some ways, right? Depersonalization has a lot of causes. It could be excess aluminum, could be Babesia, Bartonella, heavy mycotoxin exposure. But here's what carbs do. They feed fungus and candida. So if that's a problem related to your depersonalization, yes. If you're massively insulin resistant and you eat a bunch of carbs, you're going to starve the cells afterwards, creating a blood sugar rush and then that crash feeling, which can worsen depersonalization. So that's a biggie in general. You know, getting somebody's blood sugar right is important for all cases. Okay, before I go into mitochondrial dysfunction, this little blurb. If you have extreme weight loss after mycotoxin exposure, most of the time you're dealing also with mast cell activation syndrome, okay? Or maybe Graves' disease like hyperthyroidism, that's less common. More so I see those cases are dealing with mast cell activation syndrome. That's something for you to look at. Okay, we're doing good on the questions coming up, guys. Thanks for adding them. Mitochondrial dysfunction. So what do we learn about? It's a joke, right? High school chemistry or biology class. Mitochondria, the powerhouse of the cell. So true though, okay? Their job is to make energy. They got to take fats, they got to take carbohydrates and sugars, and they got to turn it into fuel, okay? That's how you burn fat. You take the fat stores, okay? Your body releases them from the fat cells. Leptin gets in there, tells them to release it from the fat cells, and then your mitochondria gobbles it up, and then it turns it into energy for you. You burn the fat, right? It's great, like a powerhouse. You burn it up like a coal plant, okay? But mycotoxins, they directly disrupt the mitochondria, so they're not as efficient at burning the fat for fuel, okay? Then it's going to disrupt your ability to actually burn fat and burn carbohydrates. So not only are you going to be fatigued, you're going to be too tired to exercise. Exercise is going to make you feel worse, and you can't lose any weight because it gets stuck in your fat, right? And so that's a biggie. And so what we see, for two reasons, we'll talk about this with lack of blood flow, but it disrupts how much oxygen gets used. So you build up lactic acid, you burn more in your muscles when you try to use them or exercise, right? So it creates exercise intolerance, right? Or like what's called post-exertional malaise. Okay, so you feel worse with exercise because your mitochondria are disrupted. They can't burn fuel as efficiently, so you can't use as much fat, and you make too much acid or toxic byproducts when you do burn sugar or fuels, fat, right? And so that's a major blockade. Again, what are we going to do? Number one, we're going to deal with the root cause. Find it in the home, find it in the body, detox it, kill it, get it out. Okay, that's important. Test with the mold plates, test the sinuses, test your home, test your clothes, test your stuff. You can treat the home, remove the source. You can use the fogging. You can use the EC3 mold wipes, the enzyme solution, the fogging solution, clean the environment, clean out your sinuses, detox. Then you need to heal the mitochondria. Here's a really big one, phosphatidylcholine. This is a game changer for fat loss. This is a game changer for mold detox, for brain fog, for gallbladder issues, for mitochondria. Okay, PC, number one, makes your membranes of your cells work and more flexible. So fat can get in and out, food, nutrients can get in and out, toxins can get in and out. That's really important. Your mitochondria need lots of PC to function. So those phospholipids help your mitochondria repair themselves if they've been damaged from mycotoxins, help your cells repair themselves. That helps you get toxins out of the cell, helps you get toxins out of the gallbladder, helps your bile production flow. That's important for fat digestion and breakdown. It gets fatty acids out of the liver. Where do you break down a lot of fat? The liver, okay? And where are you going to make energy from if you're breaking down the fat cells? The liver, okay? So phospholipids, especially PC, helps you get that out of the liver, gets fatty acids out of the liver. If somebody has non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, they need PC. Phosphatidylcholine. Okay, you want me to spell it? I'm going to spell it. You guys ready? P-H-O-S-P-O-T-I-D. Tiddle. So Y-L-C-H-O-L-I-N-E. There you go, you guys. It's one of the spelling bee. Okay, where do you get PC? Microbalance Health Products has a great source of PC on their website. The link is on the profile page, okay? So that's the phosphatidylcholine. Big game changer. Great across the board for all those issues. You can also look at things like CoQ10, ubiquinol, acetyl L-carnitine is really, really important for helping fat utilization, helping burn fat, build muscle, make energy. All right, thank you, Catherine, for putting that in there. The spelling is in there, guys, so you can see that on there. And so carnitine, those are all good ones. Methylene blue, those sort of things, great options for mitochondrial dysfunction. Remember, this is not medical advice, just informational purposes only. Consult your healthcare provider for that front. Let me check questions here because I want to make sure we get some of these questions. During the past 10 years, I put on 20 pounds. Despite being a healthy eater, physically active, how long will it take before I start losing weight? I'm doing all the right things, but the scale won't budge. Despite the addition of sweating activities and Epsom salt baths, sweating, saunas, Epsom salt baths, great ideas for detox, okay? What signs are indicative that weight loss is forthcoming? My adrenals are getting back to normal. My mycotoxins are going down. I'm getting my energy levels back. What else can I do? This is great, right? She's doing all the right tracks. She's eating healthy. She's exercising. She's detoxing. It means her exposure levels are going down. What's the last step here? We have to repair these things. We got to repair the pituitary, right? She's doing the root cause. Now we've got to do the repair work for the pituitary gland, okay? So what's that look like? That looks like eating for the leptin resistance diet we talked about. Lowering your carbohydrates, 3 meals a day. Oh, here's a big one I forgot. No snacking. Okay, 3 meals a day, no snacking. If you're getting hungry, if you're getting hypoglycemic, more protein, more salt water, bigger meals. Okay, no snacking because we got to get the rhythms right. Okay, and so we're not eating anything 4 to 5 hours before bedtime. Okay, we're doing all that good work. We're exercising after meals if we need to, walking just to get the blood sugar and insulin right. Okay, that's going to repair the leptin. Then we're going to look at things like making sure our sinuses are totally cleared out. Okay, doing nasal rinses with Citridrops, doing the Citridrops nasal spray, getting the sinuses cleared out because if there's bacteria or fungus left, it will impact that pituitary gland. We can use things like Celtropin, the microbalance spray, that helps to repair the pituitary gland. We can do GABA at bedtime, help that growth hormone, right? We can start to repair these pathways that are in there. Once you start doing that, you'll feel, what will you feel? You'll sweat more naturally on your own. Your stamina will go up, okay? Your energy, your strength is all going to go up. And then what's going to happen? Then the weight and fat's going to start to come off, okay? But we've got to repair that pituitary gland. Okay, so we talked about leptin resistance. We talked about insulin resistance. We talked about mitochondrial dysfunction. Now we're going to talk about hypoperfusion. What was that word again? Lack of blood flow. So what we see happens over and over again with mycotoxin illness, with mold illness, is that at a cellular level, okay, at a big level, where our blood flow might be good. But at a cellular level, we call it the capillary bed, the little tiny veins and arteries right next to the cells, that starts to get blocked, okay? Mycotoxins and mold spores will block those pathways, and they'll lower another hormone. You guys are getting a really good education on hormones today. We talked about leptin, MSH, insulin. Here's another one, VIP, because it's so very important, okay? Vasoactive intestinal peptide, don't need to know that. VIP, very important, okay? What's that one do? It increases blood flow to our cells. People with mold toxin and mycotoxin illness, they have a lack of VIP. We can measure this in the blood as well. It's a common one we measure. If you have this, what are you going to have? You're going to have chronic fatigue syndrome. You're going to have GI issues. You're going to have leaky gut, okay? And you're probably going to have brain fog, and it's probably going to have low MSH, okay? What if you have all those things? What do you have? You have leptin resistance. What can't you do? Lose weight, and fat loss, fitness, stamina, all that's going to be tough. So what happens is the mycotoxins block that oxygen flow, blood flow at the cellular level, those little capillary beds. And if you can't get oxygen, you can't have a fire. Without a fire, you can't burn fat. Without fat, you can't make energy. So you have chronic fatigue syndrome, okay? Or you're exhausted, and exercise makes you feel worse, okay? So now let me back up. That's a lot. That's a lot of chemistry. Let me tell you this. To make energy efficiently in the cells, your mitochondria need oxygen. Just like your campfire, your bonfire needs oxygen to burn bright and hot, your mitochondria need oxygen to burn fat and make energy. Just like a fire. You guys, we have little fires inside of our cells. When we make energy, we break these little bonds open. What gets released? Heat and light. That's energy, heat and light. Okay? To make heat and light, we need oxygen and we need fat or sugar, right? To make a fire, you need oxygen and you need wood, right? Or you need a combustible item, right? So fat is like the wood and oxygen is oxygen. You get them together, you create heat and light. That's energy. That's how you burn fat inside your cells. Without oxygen, you don't burn fat. That's why a lot of people with chronic fatigue syndrome have trouble exercising, their muscles burn, they can't recover. Why? They're not burning fat, they have no oxygen. What are they burning? They're burning sugar, and when you burn sugar, what do you make? You make acid. You make lactic acid. It's inefficient, you burn, and you don't feel good. We need it for short spurts, but only little bits. You should burn oxygen, then a little sugar, then burn oxygen. Okay, but instead what happens when this happens, when you have hypoperfusion, lack of blood flow to your cells, you just burn sugar. So what do you feel like? You feel terrible, you feel exhausted, you feel acidic, and you can't lose any weight because you're not making a big fire. You're just making occasional sparks. It's like pouring lighter fluid on the fire, burns bright, and then goes back down. That's what happens when you burn sugar like this instead of fat and oxygen. Okay, so what do we need to do? It's a refrain. Treat the root cause. Deal with the mold, right? Test your environment. Clear the sinuses. Detox it out. And then, as we need to deal with the VIP, here's what's really big for VIP repair. Your sinuses have to be starting to be cleared. You have to be treating your sinuses. Nasal rinses, nasal spray, Citri drops nasal spray, right? Sinus Defense 2.0. You have to be clearing your sinuses out. Check the link in the bio for the shop for these because these are key to clear these sinuses out, right? Get these guys clear. We'll also do with our patients sinus massages to open these guys up, lymphatic drainage, cranial adjustments, right? Get these guys opened up so we can get these sinuses cleared out and drained. You want to do a fun experiment? So take a nasal swab. You can do a nasal swab or a Q-tip, okay, a sterile Q-tip. Take one of the mold plates, swab it on there, see what's growing, right? Wait the 5 to 7 days and see what grows in there, right? It's off-label use. I'm not saying Microbalance endorses that use, but it's neat to see what grows. And then you know, okay, I need to keep treating or I'm good. That's how you start to repair VIP so that the mold toxins and bacteria don't keep impairing that pituitary. And then we can start to repair the pituitary with, we can do celltropin. It's a biggie on that, right? The leptin resistance diet we talked about. Now here's a biggie too though. I talked about this a little bit with leptin, is you can take glycine at bedtime. Okay, high dose glycine helps to increase VIP in the pituitary, helps you sleep, helps repair connective tissue. So if you're struggling with bedtime eating, you can do a little bit of bone broth or collagen. It'll fill you up a little bit, but also it'll add glycine and help that repair at nighttime for VIP. Okay, really, really good. So that helps a ton. So this way you can start getting that blood flow going. You can get your energy back on board. You can start burning that fat again, making that bonfire inside your cells, stoking the metabolism, right? That's a fitness industry term that everybody loves. Stoke that metabolism because it really gets it burning, okay? And so that's a big way to get your energy back, burn the fat, get your fitness and stamina going, get strong again. Okay, I'm going to keep going. I know we only booked out to 7:30. If you got to go, you guys can come back and watch the rest, but I'm just going to keep rolling. We're doing great. We've got more questions. We've got one more factor to cover, hormone imbalances. I know everybody wants to talk about hormones, so we're definitely going to get on that one. So let's look at a couple of questions here. And again, guys, if you got questions, throw them in there because we're talking about it. Yeah, weightlifting. Catherine asked about weightlifting. Weightlifting, strength training is a great way to do this, especially if you're struggling with a lot of these things, right? You're making lactic acid, you're struggling to get good blood flow because you don't need as much. You can go really slow and low, start really light. You can do like a Pilates based, a body weight, or even just very light and easy strength training. And it helps to get these things going and repair some of that insulin pathways. Exercise is a great way to repair, but start slow and low. Start easier than you think you should. Okay, if you think you can do 15 reps with 20 pounds, right? Do 8. And then slowly build up because it's so important, so vital for these pathways. Okay, I have a friend that just discovered heavy black mold in her air vents. I'm sorry to hear that. Can mold exposure cause platelets to become smaller than normal, along with a flushed face, heavy sneezing, and weight gain? You mentioned it affects thyroid and metabolism. Does this affect weight and lead to weight gain despite dieting strictly? Thank you. Yes, right? So we know mold does what? It causes leptin resistance. And if you're leptin resistant, you can't access your fat stores. Your body thinks you're good. You'll just keep storing fat, okay? And then we know your mitochondria can't burn the energy, right? And we know the lack of blood flow makes you exhausted and you don't have enough oxygen to burn the metabolic fires. So mold for sure can. If she's got it in her vents, she needs to clean her vents out, have her vents cleaned, have the HVAC cleaned, and then get it into a fogging routine and testing the house with the mold plates on a regular basis, right? There's a patient of ours, brought these in this week. You can see this is way overgrown, so we're working with her on how to clean that up, but you want to test regularly, make sure mold's under control. Flushed face, right? Mold can cause histamine in that front. How do you treat mast cell imbalance? We do have some great reels and videos on that. We've done some with microbalance as well, and you can see the articles. But the biggest is start with controlling histamine and mast cells. You got to stabilize those mast cells. Remove the triggers. So if it's a moldy environment, you want to get out of that environment and clean it. If you have mast cell activation, then you want to look at things like quercetin, stinging nettle, skullcap, olive leaf, feverfew, vitamin C, all those great things to help stabilize mast cells. Got to stabilize those, okay? And can it cause blood plates to become smaller than normal? It can affect the red blood cells, platelets, all of that can be strongly affected. Do you recommend staying away from dairy? Pretty typically, yeah, I do. For a lot of people, it creates excess mucus. It's inflammatory for certain folks. A lot of dairy out there is just disgusting. It's got pus in it. It's got hormones. It's been broken down. It's inflammatory for us. You know, maybe if we had some A2 dairy cows that were organic, raw, we could tolerate dairy a little bit more. But first, we got to heal more. Then we can look at adding dairy back in. But in general, you're trying to lose weight. You're trying to get in health. You're trying to detox, reduce inflammation. You typically got to avoid dairy, right? Okay. Please address the bitterness, rage, and despondency that builds in a formerly loving, high-energy, positive human being before she was cursed with this illness. This is really important, guys, okay? I merely exist now. I don't live anymore. The pain, the nausea, the chronic exhaustion, heat flashes, cold chills. This isn't living anymore. I'm so sorry you're going through this, okay? And it happens a lot, unfortunately, for our mold cases, Lyme cases, all of that. It affects the brain. The mycotoxins affect the brain. They affect you to cellular level. What happens when it affects the brain? What did I say earlier, guys? It lowers your endorphins. What happens when you lower your endorphins? More pain, less joy. Do you think you're going to be fun to be around? No, right? It's going to be tough. You got to push through as best you can. But when you have mycotoxin illness, you're going to lower your endorphins. You're going to have less pain, or more pain, less joy, right? It's going to affect the rest of your hormones. It's going to affect your neurotransmitters. Let's get into this. Hormone imbalances, right? So the mycotoxins get into your pituitary. They raise the leptin resistance. They lower the MSH, right? What else does that affect? It affects your hormones. So what do we predictably see? Higher estrogen, lower progesterone, lower testosterone. How do you look at that? You feel miserable when you're like that, right? If you've got high estrogen and low progesterone, how do you feel? You feel crazy. You feel anxious. Okay, you're probably gaining weight. You're probably growing hair in places you don't want to grow it. Your cycles, if you're a female, your menstrual cycles are probably very uncomfortable and terrible. You're probably ragey, right? If you have low testosterone as a female, you're going to have more inflammation. You're going to have more pain. You're going to have less energy, less stamina, lower libido, right? If you're a man, you're going to be depressed. You're going to be tired. You're going to have low libido. You're going to be hurting all the time, right? Just lowering your hormones on that front right from the get-go is going to make you hard to be around. Okay, so it's important that it's important in twofold, right? I don't want to let you off the hook that it's important for us, if we know we're dealing with this and we know we're having a trouble with our mental state, that we're getting help with our mental state. We're seeking therapy. We're doing those things because it's important for us to help deal with the mental side of this illness. And then two, it's also important for our family members to try to have compassion. And at times I recommend family therapy while we're dealing with that, because they've got to understand these people are dealing with a disorder that's affecting their brain. It's not just allergies. These toxicities are affecting their brain. Okay, so I talked a little about how those hormone imbalances, high estrogen, low progesterone, low testosterone, they can affect our mental state. But guess what? If you have low testosterone, you have a hard time burning fat, men or women. So you're going to have a hard time building muscle, men or women. If you're estrogen dominant, man or woman, you're going to put fat on. Where are you going to put it on? Your hips, your thighs, and your butt. Okay, in the back of your arms. You're going to get flabby in all the wrong spots. And so that's a biggie. Any idea if you're dealing with heart flutters that started after toxic mold exposure? I know I'm dealing with HPA axis issues from the mold. Thanks. It's so important that, one, you start detoxing from the mold. Two, you handle inflammation. That's the biggies. And you can deal with inflammation by some of these tips, right? So like the leptin resistant diet is going to be helpful. Focusing on binding up the mold, clearing out of your sinuses. Okay, but it's not medical advice, but if somebody's got some heart flutters, we got to deal with the pituitary gland. We got to deal with the adrenals. We got to deal with the thyroid. So how do you deal with the thyroid for these hormone imbalances? Because what happens? Well, if your pituitary is in balance, it's going to affect your thyroid gland, because the signaling to your thyroid is going to be affected, right? So you can end up with hypothyroidism. If your pituitary is affected with the mold toxins, we can also end up with what's called high TGF-beta. Okay, that's a cytokine, it's an inflammatory molecule. When that's high, it can lead to autoimmune conditions. What autoimmune conditions? Hashimoto's, thyroiditis, autoimmune conditions. What else is associated with Hashimoto's? Gluten intolerance. What makes you gluten intolerant? Guys, this is so big. If you could tolerate gluten before, now you can't. Guess what? Mycotoxins, mold, makes you gluten intolerant. It makes your gluten antibodies go up. If somebody has gluten antibodies in their stool tests, in their poop, or in their blood, and they're like, Dr. Hart, I am gluten-free for 10 years. How do I have gluten antibodies? Guess what? You got mold. You got mold in this. We go looking at what? A urine mycotoxin test, which I do recommend, guys. Urine mycotoxin tests are helpful. Their urine mycotoxins are off the charts. They were never eating gluten anymore, but they're still sensitive to it because they're having mold illness. What's that do? Gluten intolerance is directly related to Hashimoto's. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition that causes hypothyroid. If your thyroid doesn't work, you have a hard time burning fat and you're tired, okay, despite how much you exercise. Let's see. I wish there was a treatment house or retreat that you can get healthy to. Guys, shameless plug here for a second. At Keystone Total Health, Keystone Connected, we do treatment intensives where you come for 1, 2, 3 weeks. We detox, we give you a custom plan, all of that. So if you're interested, please reach out to Keystone Total Health. We do those sort of things for folks who are dealing with this specifically. We treat mold in, day out, every day. Okay, so we looked at hormones, right? We talked about hormone imbalances for testosterone, estrogen, and progesterone. We talked about thyroid hormone. We talked about how mold makes you gluten intolerant. We talked about how it disrupts leptin. What's some other ones? It'll disrupt the adrenal hormones. It'll affect cortisol. It'll affect growth hormone. Okay, Dr. Dennis with Microbalance Health Products, the founder, he released a great study showing how mold directly lowers growth hormones. You've got kids who aren't growing and they're exposed to mold, boom, direct cause right there. You're trying to put on muscle mass and you can't, well, you've got low growth hormone. That's important for muscle and recovery, right? It infects your hormones. So it's going to affect your whole life, but it's going to affect your ability to burn fat. It's going to affect your ability to get fit, get strong, improve stamina, just have energy to get through your day. If these hormones are in balance, right, that's going to be a problem. If your pituitary gland's in balance, that's going to be a problem. So what are we going to do? Guys, let's get this wrapped up here. Let's get this closing in. And if you've got questions, now's your time to answer them because we're going to start wrapping up. So what are you going to do? You're going to deal with the root cause. You're going to test your environment. You're going to test your home, your work, your clothes, your stuff, your sinuses. Test, 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 test. Figure it out, and then make sure your environment's clean. Remove the mold professionally if you need to. Treat it regularly. We fog once a week, once a month with the EC3 fogger, EC3 mold solution. Okay, we clean with the EC3 products in our office. Failure to thrive could be mold. I treat cases who have failure to thrive, low growth all the time. What do we trace it back to a lot of times? Mold suppressing their pituitary gland. You guys, I hate to see it. And some pediatricians understand it. Some have no clue. But if your kid is failure to thrive, you've got to test your home for mold. Okay, so we're going to test. We're going to find it. We're going to get out of it, right? We're going to treat the mold in the home. Then you're going to treat yourself for mold, okay? You're going to support your body in getting the mold toxins out with a good detox. You might look at something like PC, toxin binders, liver support, coffee enemas, saunas, ionic foot baths, the whole shebang, okay? Then you're going to help deal with the mold infestations like in the sinuses. You're going to take antifungal support. You're going to take immune support. You're going to help rinse the sinuses, do nasal sprays, okay? You're going to take Sinus Defense 2.0, which is a great EC3 microbalance health product to clear that out. You're going to do things like Citri drops in your nasal pure. You're going to do Citri drops nasal spray, get this stuff cleaned out, okay? And then we're going to specifically deal with the issues. If you're leptin resistant, you're going to go on the high protein diet. You're going to lower your carbs, 3 meals a day, no stacking, no food 5 hours before bedtime, right? Stay really hydrated, gentle exercise that supports your body in there. And so as you're doing that, you're going to support your mitochondria to burn that fire, support them getting the oxygen they need. You might look at glycine, collagen, bone broth in the evenings if you don't have histamine problems. You're going to look at, as you're doing that and you're doing the right things, then you're going to look at supporting your hormones. Do I need to deal with my thyroid? Should I go on a gluten-free diet? Yes, you should. Okay, for the thyroid, do I need to support my progesterone, my testosterone, my adrenals? Okay, are you supporting those things to help with healthy fat loss? Are you eating foods that are inflammatory or have mycotoxins that affect you? Those are things that can help. You guys have seen this over and over. As we get this right, fat starts coming off, energy starts going up, fitness levels start going up, right? We look at that. Somebody says, yes, there'll be a recording of this so you can re-listen to it. Tina, you can for sure do that. No problem. It'll be in the Microbalance Health Products Instagram page. It'll be on Facebook, okay? What if we can't get out of the mold in the house? Can you still slowly heal? Okay, so here's what we do if you can't get out of the house. We need to lower the levels as best you can. You've got to test and figure out where it's at, okay? You want to figure out where it's at in your house. Test all the rooms. These mold plates are super affordable. Test the snot out of the house, okay? Test all the rooms, test all the stuff, figure it out so you can lower the loads. You want to clean as often as you can. Sometimes I've had patients, if they were in a moldy environment, they got the EC3 fogger, they fogged every day, and that helped lower the load for them. You want as much fresh air as possible. If it's nice enough outside, open the windows, get that fresh air in there as much as you can, okay? If you've got a super piece of moldy furniture or whatever, like an upholstery furniture, you want to get rid of that and stick with things that are vinyl that don't get as many mold toxins, okay? Jesse, you get the mold plates. So on this link here on the Instagram, you can get a link to the shop, and they're available in the shop, okay? On the Microbalance Health Products page, they're available in the shop there. So you can get the EC3 plates. And so you want to fog. You can use the cleaning products to clean. You want to be taking a toxin binder like Chitosan or some of their mycotoxin binders on a regular basis. If somebody's currently being exposed to mold, I have them taking mycotoxin binders, mold binders, before every single meal, 3 times a day. Take it 15, 30 minutes before the meal. That way, as the toxins get released from your liver into your digestive tract, the mold toxins are binding them up. I have them doing nasal sprays all day long and nasal rinses. We're trying to keep it out of you, okay? Keep as if it's coming in, get it back out. If it's in, out, in, out. So protect your environment, protect your body as much as you can, okay? Let's see. Mold is death. Leave it all behind and start over. Not worth it. It is really true. You know, sometimes you have to have difficult conversations. It's possible, guys. You can figure it out. We have patients who move into RVs. I've had some patients camp for a couple months so they could figure it out. Move in with family, right? Whatever we have to do. Convert sheds, okay, to create a healthy environment. If your whole house plates come back just covered with the mold spores, likely you need to get out until you figure it out, okay? But what I tell patients is I treat what shows up on the table. We're going to do the best I can with whatever we can. Mold symbolically is what we need to think of as a devourer, okay? Its job is to break down the decaying things, kill it, and then make it into something new. There's a beautiful, beautiful metaphor in that. If you're constantly dealing with mold, you need to look inside you for what's breaking down inside and outside of your life and what are the areas you need to deal with so they can be broken down and turn into something new, okay? The microbalance does have multiple binders. They've got chitosan, they've got microbinder, that's on their toxin binder. Let me see if I can pull up the exact one for you guys, because those mold binders are so vital. A lot of times patients will notice right away that they're feeling better when they start those binders. It's not a cure-all, right? But it's getting the toxicity out of the cells, getting it out of the gut, getting it out of the liver. And so you want to take that, if you're being exposed, you want to take it before each and every meal. 15 to 30 minutes. Why? Because then it's sitting in the gut waiting for those toxins to be released, and it's binding them up, and then you poop them out. Make sure you're pooping. Okay, take your magnesium, take your bowel movers, do your coffee enema, stay hydrated, eat your fiber. Make sure you are you're going. So the two main binders that I love for microbalance, microchitosan is a great binder, and bioactive binder. Those are the two that Microbalance Health Products carries. Great, great mold binders. Take them before the meals, like I said, 15 to 30 minutes, like that. Joyce, brain retraining. I've got an article on sinusitis wellness with Microbalance about my 7 steps of mold recovery. Brain retraining is one of the key steps for dealing with mold illness, okay? Because it so impacts that pituitary, hypothalamus, pineal gland. It directly affects our fight or flight systems. We've got to do brain retraining to help our body get out of that trauma response from the mold, okay? We've got to help retrain that. You guys, this was great. I love this. Let me see if I've got any last minute questions coming in here. Suffering from mold illness and hypothyroid, right? We talked about that. Working with an ND, but we're getting nowhere. Couldn't tolerate the lowest dose of natural thyroid. Do you work with patients remotely? Guys, we do initial visits. We do a lot of intensives here, right? Because we take the sick of the sick. We take the complex cases. So we focus a lot on intensives. But we do our initial visits virtually. We do follow-ups virtually. So you can definitely check that out for Keystone Total Health. If you're dealing with hypothyroid, you got to cut gluten out. Okay, that's a biggie. You got to cut gluten out. Okay, on that, you got to start binding up the mycotoxins. Make sure all the fungus is clear out of the sinuses, lungs, the bacteria is out of there, so you're not reintroducing it. And then as you're doing that, then you might be able to tolerate some natural thyroid. But if you can't tolerate it, you're missing a step. Neurofeedback is a very passive and excellent way. It is a fantastic way, guys. Okay, neurofeedback's great. We use it in our clinic. Patients who come in, they get neurofeedback. We recommend it at home. It's a great way, especially if you're too hyperreactive, to do a lot of the brain retraining that's more active. Neurofeedback's a great way to do a more passive, relaxing way on that front. You guys, thanks for joining us. I'm Dr. Hart with Keystone. Thank you so much for Microbalance for having us. We love doing these talks with them. Great company, wonderful people. You guys, really, really wonderful people. Wonderful products that we use in our clinic. We use ourselves. We use it with our patients every single day. Our patients love the products, you guys. So check that out. If you're interested for some more follow-up on this topic, we did a blog post on it on sinusitis wellness, so you can read all about the leptin resistance, the mitochondria, the hypoperfusion, right, the hormone imbalances. You can read all about and follow up. Share this, follow the page for more great info. Thank you for having us, guys. Take care.